Hello, Once Forest Focus, as we welcome a special guest today in Nottingham Forest Chairman Tom Cartledge. Tom, it's wonderful to have you with us for the next 45 minutes or so and appreciate you joining us. How are you doing today?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Matt. And thank you for hosting me. I was talking about the different podcasts, and I have to be honest, your work with Harry Toffolo, who's a brilliant player of ours, was outstanding. So it's a delighted to be here, and hopefully I can keep up with his quality of conversation over the next 45 minutes.
No doubt, no doubt. We sit here now. I think you've basically done a season as chairman. I was looking, you were appointed right at the back end of August. So you've got that first season out of the way. How's it gone? And has it been what you expected? I'm sure there's been bumps in the road we'll get to. And I guess you can never fully prepare yourself for being the chairman of a Premier League football club. But what's the experience been like thus far?
Yeah, Matt, it's still quite surprising when people say the chairman of a Premier League football club. Massive honour. As you say, I started just after the start of the season. So like all of us Forest fans, you look at your list of games you've been to this season. I think I missed one from being chairman when I'd already had a holiday booked away when we drew at home to Luton. So maybe not the one that, not a bad game to miss, dare I say that. But no, I went to 42 matches this season, and incredible support home and away. A real honour, and I mean that genuinely, to stand in boardrooms or on the side of pitches representing the football club is something that I could never have dreamed of as a kid. And it's, it's a bit of burden of responsibility. And we'll talk about the ups and downs. There have been quite a few. So at times it's been quite a challenge to navigate the journey from being an out-and-out Forest fan and all those programmes behind me and on your backgrounds that we've all been to those games, and suddenly you realise that even the way you react in a way director's box, jumping around like an idiot, perhaps maybe that's not the appropriate way to behave anymore. So it's been an honour, it's been a privilege, it's something that I cherish every day, but it does come with a burden of responsibility, which at times this season's been tough, as I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, we will get to that shortly. One other thing, I mean, can you enjoy matches the way you could as a fan when you're looking at the table thinking, oh, I know what the financial implications of relegation are. I know the people involved in this really closely. I know what it all means to be in the Premier League. Are you actually able to relax and enjoy a match ever now or not?
My wife occasionally sits next to me way before this season and has done for many years, and my kids often say, Dad, are you actually enjoying this? Because you don't look like it. And at times it is, you're in the emotion, your head's going to, what does that mean next week or the week after if we don't get that point or that referee decision wasn't quite right? So it's a different type of enjoyment. But, the back-to-back away victories away at Sheffield United and Burnley, the first time we've won 2 Premier League away back-to-back fixtures in 26 years, I think it is. How can you not enjoy those moments? So there is an enjoyment. And actually, to be fair, as the season's progressed and I've understood the challenges and the opportunities of the job, if you like, I've enjoyed it more. I think the other thing is, and we'll talk about a lot, I'm sure, the ownership's care for this club and the fans that care. We all care so greatly, don't we, that we want everything to be good all the time. And maybe that extra care that I realise now exists across the club, that little extra responsibility, you feel you're part of the successes or the failures at the weekends, you take a little bit more pressure onto me in terms of the enjoyment. But listen, I love Nottingham Forest home and away, and it's just an honour to be watching games, even if it's -6 away at Blackpool at 11:15 on a Wednesday night or whatever it was. So I have enjoyed it. Moments where you sort of get caught up in the emotion of the challenges that go with the job, but it's an honour.
Like you say, around emotion, there are things that provoke a lot of emotions, not least the stadium, which I'm sure fans will want me to ask you about probably first and foremost. What's happening with the future of the City Ground? And also, I suppose the big question is, what do you want to happen as a football club? What's the scenario you'd like to see play out ultimately?
Yeah, let's talk about a couple of different things, Matt. First of all, I don't think it's been helpful, the sort of toing and froing of narrative. And, people will say, well, Tom, you're part of that in terms of the public conversation taking place with the council. And I think that's something that, with hindsight, everybody should have tried harder on both sides just to stop the dialogue taking place in public, because I think it's caused a lot of emotion. And the danger with when you go through anything like that, if people don't know the full information, people jump to the wrong conclusions. So, as I said before, at this stage, no deal's been signed to move. No deal has been signed to move to Toton or anywhere else that's been suggested. We are going through a process of continually trying to understand how to stay at the City Ground. And if we can't, what would the options be? So let's just hold that thought for a minute. Then let's look at it from a different perspective. In 2017, I was in those grounds like you were and others. We were 42nd in the pyramid of football. Our turnover was 20 million. we'd had 20 years nigh on of challenging football to watch, and therefore our season ticket numbers were 13,000 people. And we weren't selling out. We were 20,000 people, same ground, but 2/3 full. The ambition, and this is probably the thing that's taken me most by surprise. I should have known it because I knew Mr. Marinakis anyway, but himself, his son, and the joint owner, Mr. Komonakis, they live and breathe this football club. Every single day, without doubt, I'm speaking to them about something ambitious, a project, a new idea, a big vision, something more we can be doing to get better. And I think, therefore, if you follow what's happened since 2017, where are we today? 2024, 17th in the pyramid, arguably should have been higher, versus 42nd in the pyramid. A season ticket list of 18.5, 19,000. And I'm sure we'll talk about the prices and things later. But on top of that, a waiting list of over 12,000. So 30,000 arguably season ticket holders or near enough if they could get them, versus 13,000 7 years ago. I sell out every week, and a revenue that's almost 10 times bigger. We're pushing, like a lot of the Premier League clubs, over 200 million pounds of the revenues. If you just take that for one moment, I'm not sure there's a football club in the Championship, Premiership in the last 7 years have achieved as much as Nottingham Forest. And the achievement is down to one person's financial support and love of Nottingham Forest, which is Mr. Marinakis. And so he's asking me continually, and everybody around him, whether it's the football department, PR, commercial, whatever it might be, how do we keep progressing? How do we keep our ambition going? And we'll talk tonight and today about other things we've achieved, whether that's short-term ideas about vision for sports and stuff. But everything he's trying to do and push me to is progress this football club to become one of the top-tier football clubs in the Premier League and then re-enter into Europe, just like his Olympiacos team will be doing next week in the final of Europe. So then, as part of that, the question then comes back to, how does our football stadium allow that progression to continue? And, we've not had this conversation in public because we're nowhere near to discussing, the details of everything. Well, as Mr. Marinakis said 10 days ago or a week ago in his article, fan engagement will be part of any decisions we make. So let's not jump ahead of ourselves. But what we do know is as PSR moves to the squad cost ratio rule, which is really important for fans to understand, what we can spend, not in the coming season, but the following season, 85% of our revenue can be spent on the players, the coaching staff, and the amortization of player transfer fees. So if we're turning over 200 million, logic would dictate 85% of that can be spent. If we were Man City at 600 million, 85% of that can be spent. So how do we continue to be competitive? How do we continue to drive after, bringing better players and improving the squad and driving, if the ownership now, through the new model, aren't able to bring in and put their own money in to bridge those gaps? The PSR gap of 103 or 4 million pounds, whatever it was in the previous system, doesn't allow the ownership to invest that. So again, if we go back to the stadium, the conversation we all need to say to ourselves is, we've seen where we've gone from 2017 to 2024. Let's go to 2031. We want to be doing something quite profound in terms of playing the highest level of football, and our stadia needs to respond to that. So we are still very much in conversations with the City Council. I debate some of the timings of what they're saying of meetings and responses, but as I say, that's not the primary conversation we should be having. It's about what we've got at the City Ground at the moment and where can we take it. And just to reiterate the point, I'm not immune to the chance of, certain locations aren't the City Ground and other things that we may have heard in the last two games. But for me, that's getting way ahead of ourselves. We're not in that space yet. What we're talking about still is a proper conversation to have with ourselves once we understand if we can get to somewhere on the City Ground to say, how big can we make this place? How special can we make it? It's not lost on a lot of your people that I have an architectural practice that is able to understand. And there's been talks of moving the City Ground at a certain angle and all these other things. Well, the reality is the stadium site we sit in at the moment has its restrictions. Residential neighbourhoods close by limit car parking. The river is there. FIFA compliance means the direction of the pitch has to be in a certain direction, which is sometimes forgotten about. If we want to be hosting big events, you need circulation space around the outside. So we can achieve a lot at the City Ground, but we've still got to be mindful that it'll only go a certain distance in terms of providing an attendance and a revenue that we might need going forward. I mean, the City Ground, and I've talked about it in the press, is our home. We want it to be our home. We have spent 10 or 15 million pounds, I think, last season and the season before in upgrades. And you're just about to see, after Take That leave the ground, a series of more investments. And I was in London on Monday with the owner signing off checks that are significant in their millions to put safe standing in, to build the corner boxes, to increase the fan spaces. And for me, that's an example, or just a confirmation, let's call it that we're not going anywhere soon, but we're still going to have this conversation as we progress in the months and years to come with our fans and with ourselves, which is what else can we do to make the City Ground bigger, full of people, and allow the football club to progress.
I do want to come on to timescales shortly. One of the things I do want to ask you about, you've touched on a little bit there, is the freehold.
Yeah.
When it was reported that you could buy the freehold for 10 million, a lot of people, and myself included, I guess, as a layman without any understanding of the wider issue, is, buy the freehold and develop the ground. It looks like a no-brainer was the phrase. You probably saw it on Twitter within the club as well. How much more complex is it than that then? Is it a case of just buy the freehold and solve the problem? You're saying there's a lot more to it than that.
Well, listen, they're easy numbers. You throw them out. Oh, it's somebody's wages, or it's a transfer fee. It's easy that way. It wasn't that isn't quite the number, but I'm not going to go into who said what. But the next thing part of that is then a spend on the stadium on top of the 10. And I think we've spoken about before, or people have discussed, the Peter Taylor stand is probably £100 million project by the time you finish it completely. Again, our fans quite rightly are asking for hot water and drainage and better improvements for the other stands. We then would probably have to start thinking again about the Bridgeford end and how you lift that and create more capacity. So probably, it isn't, it's 10 million, let's get on with it. It's 10 million and then we spend 150, 200 million on the City Ground. And, again, as we've experienced, it's not straightforward dealing with, all the complexities of getting a planning application with car parking and local residents and the challenges of parking schemes and other things to keep pushing the attendance higher and higher. But go back to the point, Mr. Marinakis and I are completely aligned on this. The City Ground is where we play our football. We have absolutely every intention to continue to try and understand how we stay and expand it. But it would be remiss of me, the director of football, not seeing who else is out there from a playing perspective, just to keep reminding ourselves that if we had to do something, what could we do? Where could it be? Is there a site in the city? Is there another site by the river? Is there a site elsewhere in the city? Or people have discussed Toton or Ratcliffe, wherever it might be. But nothing's been done. And I think, unfortunately, there was a timing issue last week or the week before when there was an MOU signed with the county council. And we just come back to that as well at some point. That then made everybody try and put too many things together. The MOU was signed really to help the football club progress its vision for sport for Nottinghamshire. So we've got a better relationship with the county, but also because the training ground needs to be relocated or found some additional space. And the county council have land around Home Pierpoint that we're quite interested in discussing. So there's lots of different things that go on. And I think, Matt, this is one of the challenges I've had this season, if I'm honest, as a fan, is to say, it's so tempting to try and explain everything away and tell everybody to try and keep everybody understanding. But actually, this is a complicated £200 million turnover business. And at any one time in businesses like that, you have to be looking at different things and different options, and things leak out because we're a big public, big fan base, which drives lots of attention. We'll do what we need to do to keep talking to the fans, and we've got a fan advisory board meeting, I think, on the 3rd of June, and we'll start talking with the guys there about the progression of the City Ground and what might be coming after safe standing and what else could we do to it to keep it improving. And if the position changes and we can't stay at the City Ground, we'll have a conversations with the fans about all sorts of things, the makeup of Anywhere New and all those other things. But it's a long way down the line yet. I mean, the talk like, we've signed a deal, we're moving, is just completely out of kilter to where we are. So
an MOU, a memorandum of understanding, which I didn't really understand anyway. It just means, or what does it mean? And how far I know you've sort of touched it, but how far are you along with Toton? It's just one site that's been identified and that's it, basically, or not?
Correct. Yeah. So what is an MOU? You can do it in all sorts of businesses. We've just done one with Eon, Matt, and you may have seen that. So Eon being a key sponsor partner of the football club, we want them to work closely with us on a myriad of sustainability initiatives, because I think we all acknowledge that football probably has got a large carbon footprint and we need to improve on it to meet our sustainability requirements, which is again another one of Mr. Marinakis's expectations, that this football club becomes more responsible when it comes to the sustainability. So the MOU with E.ON wasn't a legally binding anything. It simply says you've got the skills around carbon reduction, sustainability, electricity, etc. We need that. Can we work together to get to a solution that might work for the football club? So the MOU with the county council is not a legally binding conversation with anything. It is a document that allows us to work a little bit closer together, relating to all those issues and opportunities. But if I keep coming back to the point here, and sometimes I sort of reflect on this, Mr. Marinakis is incredibly ambitious for this football club. And I struggle to imagine why a football fan at Nottingham Forest at the moment can't be excited about what he's achieved so far and where he wants to take us. 3 years now of Premier League football was something we could only dream of 10 years ago. The previous ownership got us into a position where some fan groups were questioning, will the football club, survive? And, you don't get the improvements across we've seen on the football side and the non-football side, without thinking big and dreaming and turning those dreams into realities. And so, when he made that comment about the stadium, it wasn't necessarily talking about moving, it could be at the City Ground. The point is, the City Ground, as we all love it to be at the moment, isn't befitting the ambition of where we want to go. Can it, where we are today? I think it can, but we need a lot of things to fall in place to be able to make that investment to stay, which is what we heard a big number of fans say. And Matt, the other thing I think, from my perspective, it's hard to balance all the noise at times as a fan, but also as the chair, because we've also had an enormous amount of fans write an email, a message saying, do you know what, we understand this dynamic we're in. We understand that there's a dilemma here, and we want to be part and supportive of the decisions that we make in the long term. So, there's no big update. Today isn't about saying, the chairman's made a statement to say something different. What the chairman is clearly saying here is the Marinakis family and ourselves and all the Forest fans want to be the most successful version of ourselves as we can be. And rightly, we need to see how big we can get the City Ground in its current location. Or if we can't, we need to have the conversation about alternatives.
What is the timescale on when you need to reach a resolution? Because 30 years sounds like a long time. I guess it can't go on forever. Is it possible to put a deadline on these things, or does it have to be fluid by nature in negotiations to settle it?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily purely one negotiation down to the city. There's so many moving parts with big developments and property. People will call back and say, well, we've been talking about this for 4 or 5 years already. We certainly don't want it to drag on for another 4 or 5 years. But, nobody should be expecting a big reveal or a big announcement about anything. We'll work calmly, as we always do, with the club's best interest, or the fans' best interest in mind. And I would imagine, this will continue for the next 6-12 months of conversations that will go on. And I just hope that the fans don't get distracted with incorrect noises and focus on the massive achievements, which I'm sure we can come on to, that have taken place in the last 3 years, and we want to progress in the next 3 years. But that's not me belittling the fact that we won't keep it in touch. And as I keep saying, we're not doing anything radical. We're looking after the best interests of the football club.
Last question on the stadium. This is probably quite a blunt question, so hopefully you don't be too offended by it. One of the things I see online a lot is, because you are an architect, on one hand, you're the best person to advise it. On the other hand, people say you've got too much of a vested interest and you can't be an independent arbiter in the stadium move. What do you say to that?
Matt, I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Maybe you want to go back 5 years and find out who instigated the ideas around the Peter Taylor stand and drew them up and progressed that. And, that's where my involvement with the ownership started. I was instigating that and trying to put the property deal together back 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, if we ever move, I wouldn't necessarily say that we'll be the designers of it anyway, because the ownership will decide who they want to use, who's appropriate for the job, not just because who the chairman is and all that stuff. But turn it around the other way. I care about the football club. I know what good looks like from a design perspective, but from a property perspective. And I won't sign this club up to anything that I don't think is in the best interest of the football club. So you can put those sort of conspiracy theories aside that this is here to pay for a holiday or something. I mean, it's ridiculous. I love this club inside out, and the ownership know that, and he'll decide who he uses when he wants to, I'm sure.
Moving away from the stadium, unless there's anything else you want to say about it, but I'm happy to move on.
No, I mean, Matt, the one thing I will say is, look how good she looks right now with the red, the colours in the corners and the improvements we've made. And I just would like to add to that the investment the ownership made this season in the fan zone. I think we're going to continue to improve that space. The museum, not insignificant reopening up of the Trent End lower. Alongside that, allowed the tours of the ground to start back. These are all investments that shouldn't be forgotten in the bigger conversations. We are progressing and improving our home to be the best version of itself with what we've got at the moment. So again, just to reiterate, you'll see more of that this season, this close season with safe standing going in and other improvements to hopefully improve the experience for all the fans. And we're going to have hopefully a massive season in there next year and full house and lots of noise every week.
Will the safe standing be in place for the start of next season and the corner boxes that you mentioned? Or will that be a longer project?
No, they'll both be there. Well, certainly safe standing will be in the boxes. We have every intention of getting them ready for the 16th of August.
Excellent. Just a quick word for our sponsors, the Trent Navigation. Thanks as ever for their fantastic support. And through the whole season, one of the big factors in us being able to do this 5 or 6 times a week for you guys to listen to and hopefully enjoy. Talking of hopefully enjoying, we have our live show on Thursday, June the 13th at the NAV. Lewis and Gary leading the panel with a few other podcast regulars. Tickets are £8.80, 80p booking fee, and £1 from every ticket goes to charity. But hopefully come down, see as many of you there as possible. As you can see from the photo on screen, if you're watching on YouTube, it was a packed house last time, and hopefully it will be again as we review the season and look ahead to the summer transfer business and what we can hope for next season. Before that, on June the 8th, Saturday, June the 8th, is Forza Fest, which Greg and those guys from Forza Garibaldi put so much work into. Tickets £15, or scan the QR code on screen if you're watching this. Otherwise, you can get them via the Trent Navigation website or gigantic.com. The Chase, the Publix, Boardmarsh, Penny Moon, Molly Ralph, who Greg was bigging up the other day on the show, Twin Head, Set in Motion, and Craig Hewitt are all on the bill. So hopefully people will go down to that and have a good day. Gates open from 2 p.m. on Saturday, June the 8th. Excellent. Ticket prices was the other most emotive issue that I wanted to ask you about. You talked about lessons learned a little bit there. Any lessons learned around ticket prices and the reaction to it? Just generally on that, and then I'll ask you a couple of specifics. But any reflections on how it all went down?
Yeah, I came off social media, Matt, because I didn't like the personal abuse that perhaps I was taking at the time. And I think that one of the lessons for me there is that proximity. I want to learn, I want to hear, I want to be part of the community, but there's also a balance that needs to be made for everybody. It was clearly a very emotive position. We end up in a position now where 97.9% of people have renewed. That's not a vindication, but that for me is an indication that people probably understood, didn't necessarily want the messaging and didn't enjoy the percentage increases. But I did an exercise last night looking at Bournemouth's prices that have just come out, and we're exactly the same. Same season ticket price, halfway line and behind the goal. And we are still in the cheapest quartile of the division when it comes to the league prices. Clearly, the biggest emotive one was the 18 to 21 brackets. We listened to the fan advisory group. We created the scheme around buyback 3 games, so that a fan can now sell back 3 games, which recoups £90, I think, in that age bracket to offset during the season. And people will say, well, I don't want to miss any games, and I don't, I'd rather be there. And yeah, that's fine. But Matt, it goes back to the point about squad cost ratios. It goes back to the point about the size of the stadium. People said, oh, it's only a couple of extra million. In a club like ours, all the money, all the revenue that we can generate helps build the football team and put the players out on the pitch. And so it was a tough one. It was hard at the time. particularly on the social media. But again, and go back to it, we had a lot of fans who wrote to us, rang us, messaged us, and said, "Yeah, I get it. We understand. We understand that actually the prices perhaps in certain areas for a couple of seasons or 3 seasons had been below where they could be for the market, and we're accepting it, and we will renew." And we're delighted with that. Nobody takes any credit in asking people to pay more. But it was a tough one at the time. But I think we're grateful, put it that way, for the fans who've come out and showed their support for the team.
Yeah, you mentioned, I mean, I said it on here that my gripe with the season ticket prices was around the age brackets and the risk of pricing out a generation of fans, which would be my worry. Is that settled now? Do you think age brackets are set as they are, or would you consider bringing them back in future?
No, I think they're settled with what they are at the moment. I mean, I think a bigger stadium allows us to consider different options. Go back to the City Ground size. We're probably 10,000 seats too short for the amount of people who want to come and watch the game. If we had a bigger array of seats, could we create more variety in pricing? Possibly. But I think what we've got now is a settled point. If we look at the numbers, juniors £10 a game, and junior to under 18 is £15 a game, and adults is in the cheapest bracket is about £30 a game. And unfortunately, that is a cost now appropriate to Premier League football. It's an entertainment, it's an experience, and it's unfortunately the cost of the whole football community is expensive, and everybody has to share that.
One of the other things that goes hand in hand with all this is around fan engagement. I guess as you become a bigger entity, a bigger business, it's probably hard to stay in touch and maintain good relations with the core fan group, I guess, the match day going group especially. Do you feel like there's been a bit of a regression this season in that sense or not?
No, I think it's, again, social media has a place, and there's a lot of people who use it and actively share thoughts. But we've got an enormous amount of other fans who write, ring, message, approach in different ways, who probably don't speak. I don't sense that in all the groups that there's a breakdown in a relationship or a shift. It is it's a bigger machine, it's a bigger club. But the fan advisory board is in infancy. We got that going this year. We didn't have it last year, but we've got it going this year. My colleague Will and his team are doing a brilliant job listening and learning. And we will work out over the next 12 months, probably better than we've done in the previous 12 months, about messaging and timing and things. But I keep coming back to, yes, there's some season ticket prices holders are disappointed. I get that. I understand that. But we've got 4.4 million social media followers. We've got a waiting list of 13,000 people. We've got so many fans who are also wanting to hear and listen and be part of this amazing thing that we're creating together. That we've got to find the right balance between all the good stuff, but also, understanding the challenges that we maybe get on Twitter and other things that follow season ticket prices. That we're part of changing into a big Premier League football club, and things will evolve for people.
So could you make any kind of commitment around consultations around, and I know stadium moved a long way away, but future ticket prices, about input from fans? You mentioned the fan advisory board. There'd be a full consultation. When next season's ticket prices are announced, they'll be fully involved and fully considered. That's from that point of view, then. Yeah,
and we had a conversation with them. They're saying it wasn't a full consultancy. We went through a big exercise looking at the prices and where we've got to. We will consult with those groups, Matt, absolutely, and we will continue to do that. And as I said, we're all humble. We've got a session on the 3rd of June. We'll look at what was good this year and what was bad, and how we can improve. But there will also be decisions that the football club and the ownership and I and the management teams across the club will have to make that won't always be universally popular. I'm not talking about stadium moves. I'm just talking about small things that might be required to either comply with the Premier League rules or to be competitive. And we'll continue to do the right thing, consult fans where we can or will and want to, but also there'll be some decisions we have to make.
I want to talk about the wider vision for the football club before we finish extensively as much as we can. But one thing that really impacts that is PSR and how you invest in the football team. Lots of reports today as we record this before it comes out tomorrow around we've got to sell before June the 30th to avoid another points deduction. I don't know how much you can say, but to what extent is that true, and what's the financial state of play of the football club around PSR?
Yeah, as you say, there's lots of rumours and lots of conversations. I'm not going to be committing here to talk about levels of where we're at or what we're not at. I know that the football side and the football club is incredibly well run, and the ownership are aware and where we want to be and how we want to progress. So, Matt, I can't get drawn on that today, and neither your fans, I'm sure, would expect us to go into the details of the financial runnings of the football club. But rest assured, the ownership know how to run a football club successfully and will continue to do so.
How do you, as a football club, what's the view on PSR and the evolution of it? If I was saying, we've said this before on the podcast, it feels like an unfair system, and it feels like I'm not sure it's going to get any better with the new rules. How do the club view the situation around PSR in general? I might ask you a couple of specific follow-ups, but what's the feeling internally about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the squad cost ratio is now the thing we're all focusing on, because we've got one season left of PSR, and then we move forward. It was PSR modernised during its numbers of years when we weren't participating in necessarily when we're in the Championship. Other clubs will argue that the numbers should have been increased because the world's changed, inflation and other costs have gone up. But I think we are in a regulated league called the Premier League. There's rules in place to try and help fairness or help encourage clubs not saddle the future generations of the fans with big debts. And that's not just what CSR is there to do, but the football governance bill that will pass through, I'm sure, whichever party is successful on the 4th of July. They're all mechanisms to make sure that football clubs are well managed and well run financially for the longevity of the club, not just for the short term. Obviously, you could argue that CSR, the new system, with 85% of your revenues being able to spend on the playing costs, will automatically allow the top 5 or 6 with big revenues to spend more on players. And you could argue, therefore, there's an injustice to that. And we want to therefore try and catch up and grow. And how do you do that? Revenue, stadiums, commercial deals, sponsorship, and all the other things that we work hard on to try and make sure that the football side has a big enough budget. We'll never get back to a space where there are no rules and regulations governing the spend in football. So you work within the parameters what we've got, and that's what we continue to do.
A predecessor of yours says we wouldn't be in trouble with PSR again. I suppose I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you envision us having any further issues with PSR before we move to CSR, as you were calling it?
The one thing Nick said to me when we handed over, and he and I remain close, is don't make comments on things like this, because we all learn that you can't retract those comments. So there's no comment from me on any of these things. I think hopefully, Matt, we can go on to some of the other positive things that are going on as well around the football club. But I keep reiterating, look at the progression we've made, and that's down to a person who knows how to run football clubs, whose other club, or one of his other clubs, is gracing the European final next Wednesday, and I'm sure all the Forest fans will be supporting Olympiacos. And that guy we trust. We're in a great position with his ownership to kick on.
Let's talk about the vision for the football club then. Now we've laid the foundations. A lot of the conversations we've had recently about looking to next season in the short term is where we want to get as a football club on the pitch, and we can talk about off the pitch as well. I mean, I said any kind of improvement on 17th points, I'd be very happy with that. I get the impression that internally, and Mr. Marinakis is looking higher than that. Is that fair to say?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think we're all frustrated that we weren't higher up. That wasn't a criticism of anything particularly. We had some tough decisions against us refereeing-wise, which were well documented. We had some games where we probably maybe converted, particularly in the first half of the season, into victories. So, were we satisfied with 17th? No, not if you're ambitious, not if you want to be higher up the pitch. I think the manager and the squad we've got is strong, and we can build on that. And I think, we want to be looking higher. And I think Brentford really could have been in reach to us this season if a few of those results had gone our way. That being said, we won 4 away games: Newcastle, Chelsea, Sheffield United and Burnley. Good victories on the road. If we'd picked up a few more points at home, I think that would have been achievable being higher up. But let's just talk about the vision generally, rather than just purely the football side for the moment. One of my sort of questions from Mr. Marinakis was to make sure that Nottinghamshire generally feels the positive impact of Premier League Football Club. And how we're going to do that? Invest in the academy, so there's more opportunities and pathways for kids to come through Nottingham Forest Academy and then try and achieve the first team. And I think we've seen as well those great statistics that Nottingham Forest have had an academy player either on the bench or in the squad since World War II, which is a phenomenal on every game, which is a phenomenal statistic. So how do we improve the facilities around the academy? Women's sport, We want to see the women's team progress. We were close to promotion. We didn't make it this year, but we've reiterated and reinvested to make sure next season the women's side progress. He wants every child in the county to enjoy the mental and physical benefits of sport. And we launched with the Prime Minister, and just to be really clear, whatever political persuasion the Prime Minister would have been, they'd have been welcome at the club as part of the launch. It wasn't just a Conservative thing, which came back in bucket loads. We launched a far-reaching 3-year plan that we want to work with our key sponsors to make sure every child in the county exercises more and experiences the benefit of sport and fitness. And I think, people say, well, that's not about football. That's a vanity project. Well, look at the impact that Mr. Marinakis' investment has had in Piraeus area of Athens. How he's facilitated a change there in terms of facilities, sport, and movement of how kids are exercising more, and he wants that to happen in the county of Nottinghamshire. So, how do we do that? Alongside that, fair equity. We hosted a diversity equality conference this year. Groundbreaking for many, talking openly about the diversity challenges in sport and the legacy of racism, which needs to be stamped out. So there's a lot going on. You experienced yourself a great piece with Harry Toffolo, talking openly about his challenges, but also how the football club can bring people together at tough times and good times and support them. We hosted a cancer drop-in centre for the Maggie's Cancer Charity down at the museum a few weeks ago, and we've got another one of those coming up in September, supporting any Forest fans and their families who sadly are being impacted by a horrible disease as cancer. And so when we talk about the vision, obviously the output we always want to achieve is 3 points on a Saturday and a Sunday, or Monday or Friday, whatever the days might be these days. But the vision is bigger than that. The vision is about, he spent 250 million. He wants to spend more. He wants to give Nottinghamshire hope. He wants to use sport as a vehicle for kids to exercise. And he wants to be a legacy. And the legacy needs to be felt from everybody. And I think you'll feel the same. The change in the mood in the last 3 years of Premier League is massive. And we want to build on that and harness it. So the vision is about the football club as a Premier League status benefiting everybody, both the city, the county, the kids of the future, and obviously what does success look like, all those things alongside winning football matches. And goes back to your point about ambitions for the league table. We want to be higher up it, and that's just the narrative. We don't talk about settling for anything. We talk about how do you get better, how do you improve, what's the data, what's the analysts, what is the next step on this club's great journey. And as I say, as a football fan, it's so exciting to listen and be part of his view of the world, because it's at the heart of it is ambition.
One of the ways of realising that ambition, it's very hard to keep pace with the clubs in the Premier League, isn't it? I spoke to Chris McGuane about the academy and how much that's had to expand. You've touched on the training ground as well. What's the kind of long-term dream there? We see Leicester built a £100 million training ground and invest heavily. Mr. Marinakis wants to invest heavily, obviously, from what you're saying. What would you like to happen around the training ground and the development of the academy in the next 10 years, say? Well,
the good thing about the system, the investment system, or the PSR and SCR rules, is the infrastructure investment you can take out of the impact of what it means for the first team. So by investing in those assets doesn't mean we're depriving the opportunity to invest further in the teams. We know that the facilities we've got are too small for the volume of teams that are using it at the moment. So, Nigel Dougherty, I think, believe it or not, it was 25 years ago this week that his family bought the football club. And, I'm sure, knowing him and his family very well, that, he would love to have seen us back in the Premier League. But he also left a legacy in a positive way of investing into a training facility many years ago. The Nigel Dougherty Academy was originally made for the academy kids, and then the first team moved there, and now the women's team use some of the facilities there. And ultimately, it's too small for what we need. So the vision is, and we continue to do this, hence the MOU and other things, is to try and identify land either to relocate the entire training ground to a, not necessarily Leicester style, but our version of that, or can we find a way of splitting some of the facilities up, so maybe one or two of the groups, the men's and women's, move and the academy stay or something. It's not an ideal situation because you want everybody in the same place, living the same vision and everything. But the sparsity of land, the availability of the appropriate amount of space. We're talking 50-something acres. If you wanted to relocate all of it, is not that easy to find. Yes, we can all think of fields close by to where we live that you could think would be ideal, but you've got traffic issues and everything else and planning to achieve at the same time. So the vision for the academy is to allow them to progress as best they can on the facilities we've got, keep investing in it, keep spending money on the facilities and the classrooms, keep attracting the best talent to allow Chris and Craig and the team who are incredibly talented down there to deliver first team capable football players. But ultimately the facilities, just like the City ground, need enhancing, and we'll find a solution of how to do that.
It's ever harder, though, isn't it, to find the next Brennan or Brennan Johnson, next Ryan Yates, when you're not in the Championship. Obviously, that's great to be in the Premier League, but finding the next one to get into that 11 is looking like a challenge. How confident are you? It's more of a football question, but of getting more players through in the next couple of years to join the ranks of those lads?
Yeah, I think success breeds success, and I think if you can demonstrate to young talent who may not be in our academy now, but also academy talent that is there, to say to them, look at Ryan Yates. Yes, his journey was a remarkable one. I love the fact that the social media team put out there that he's scored in the Conference League 2, League 1, Championship and Premier League. So that just shows to everybody what a great professional that guy is and what can be achieved if you put your mind to it. But we now need to remind the young lads and girls in the academy for both teams that, people from Nottinghamshire have been successful, continue to be so since 1947 and found their ways into squads. But the expectation now in the Premier League and the quality of the play means those kids are going to have to keep working harder and harder on their skills and their capabilities to be able to achieve, playing for Nottingham Forest first team. But I mean, one of my favourite songs is he's one of our own. And, we want to replace names over the next 10, 20, 30 years, don't we? We keep singing that great song that, a guy or a girl or somebody from the county of Nottinghamshire has put the Garibaldi on.
We always kind of end the last 5 minutes with any other business, any final words. So I guess the floor is yours. Just what message would you send to fans? I guess they sent a message, the Matchday fans, around the future of the City ground. So that's one thing, but just a general message that you would want to convey to fans at the end of this interview.
Matt, I'm maybe repeating things I've said already, but as I look at the Premier League now, we are in incredibly great shape. We have an ownership who understand the football world. They understand investment. They understand returns. They understand what great looks like. They've achieved and delivered it themselves at other football clubs. And I personally think, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm misty-eyed, we should be the envy to many, because we've got a guy and a club under ownership that cares. It listens. It understands. Maybe I've taken some tough messages this season around certain elements like season ticket prices, but so many people also understood the rationale behind why that had to take place. The stadium is absolutely sacrosanct to everything we want to do. There's no need to, hype up and fear that, next week something's going to announce a move. We continue to work hard on the City ground, and that's really important for everybody to understand. But as I say, let's not let those things distract from the bigger picture. A club that cares about its fans, a museum, a fan zone, a tours, a club that wants to put on events like a cancer event and a mental health thing to let fans be part of listening and learning together. A club that has first team players from Nottinghamshire progressing, such as Ryan Yates, alongside some amazing Brazilian and talent from other parts of the world. And, as I sort of enter into hopefully a quieter few weeks, albeit there's a lot of projects to get done in the off season, I cannot tell you how excited we should all be with the ownership, the structure that we've got, and the passion they have to make Nottinghamshire proud of Nottingham Forest being the best version of itself. So maybe that's a sort of triumphant thing to end on, but pack your suitcases, go on holiday and come back, because it's going to be very exciting next year. And hopefully less talk about referees and more talk about climbing the table and where we belong.
Yeah, I haven't talked about referees. Let me ask one question. I don't know if you can answer this. How will the club vote on the VAR vote to get rid of VAR? You can't ask me that because we haven't discussed it internally yet. But technology needs to do its best job for the club and all the clubs. And then if it needs to be improved, then it needs to be
the best in class to make it work for everybody. I mean, I'm also alongside the football side. I love my rugby, and I've been to plenty of rugby games and listened to the referees and see it play out in a very different way. And VAR has enhanced that sport because of the fan participation and the understanding of the decision. So there's a lot of improvements that can be made, I'm sure, if it's going to be embedded for the years to come.
I can't end on VAR. I hate talking about VAR.
No.
What have you learned? What have you learned about yourself, and what lessons have you learned in the last year that you'll implement in year 2, hopefully, as chairman?
Man, that's quite a deep question, isn't it? Am I going to open up my inner self? I mean, what I've learned, and this sounds awful, is I'm really proud and lucky to have a wife and 2 children and 2 boys who are Forest mad. And sometimes they remind me, Dad, of what's more important. And the 4 of us sitting in the cars on the way home from most home and away games, chatting about the results, the performances, and being fans is really important for me to remind myself, because I can get very emotional and in the weeds of everything that's going on, and the tweet that said this and that and the other. But actually, the 4 of us sitting, I don't know, 3.5 hours on the way home from Bournemouth, debating decisions and the best players and who's your best 11 and would you play 3 at the back or 4 at the back and all those other things. We must never forget what fun and excitement Nottingham Forest brings so many people, and that includes me. So the lesson for me next year is balance it between the professional responsibilities of being chairman and the dad and the husband that loves the football with his family on the match days.
Very good. Very good. Right. If people have enjoyed this, do us a favour, hit like, hit subscribe. You can become a channel member and give us a lovely review on iTunes. Very much enjoy reading those. Tom, you've given us a lot of your time, which we're very grateful for. Good luck with the summer and next season. But yeah, great to have you on.
Yeah. And Matt, one last thing. Just everybody, well done. Thank you for supporting the club this year. Travel well and health and safety next year. Love listening to the sport, and I love the comments and the feedback, whether it's in the petrol station on the way home from Burnley or as I get out my car at the City Ground. So thank you, everybody, and we're all in this together.
Excellent. We certainly are. We certainly are. We shall be back next week. Not sure what with. It's all very freewheeling and chilled out because it's half term for me. But in the meantime, have a good day, and we shall see you soon.